Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 28 of the 2024 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And as of this recording, 1 week from this point, we would have been through the first day of the draft. We would have known exactly how everything played out. Caleb Williams going number 1 overall, all the way through that 32nd pick. Right now, it's the Chiefs. Right now, we expect them to take a wide receiver. But we'll know the story at this point next week. Draft in Detroit, Thursday, April 25th through the 27th. That's Saturday. And I'm looking forward to it. I think everybody is. This is my favorite time of year. We're really getting hot and heavy with the draft. And what I like to do before the draft begins is really kind of play a by the numbers, NFL draft by the numbers. This is the 5th installment of NFL draft by the numbers because it allows us to really look back. What does history tell us with the draft? Can we then predict where a lot of these players are going to be coming off the board? And we've gone through all the skill position from the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends. Now we're getting into the trenches, taking a look at the offensive line. And really what I like to do, you play by the numbers. Most of the time you think of analytics. We're doing things a little bit differently. Let's take a look at this year's draft class and really how that relates to the years past. And I think, if we learn from history, what history tells us, we can oftentimes predict or get a good idea of where a lot of these guys are going to be coming off the board. So if we jump into things, obviously we got the tackles, the guards, and the centers. We'll go by position group. So when we take a look at this offensive tackle group, I think it's unprecedented. We have as many as 8-9 tackles that we could potentially see come off the board in round number 1. I've seen a lot of mock drafts where people have 7-8 offensive tackles. History tells us that that's not going to happen. If we look at the last 5 years, and we'll look at 5-year averages and 3-year averages, but then in the last 5 years, the most we've seen was 2020, when there were 6 taken in round number 1. That was the draft with Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson, Isaiah Wilson. So that was that draft class. Since then, the last 3 years, we've averaged about 4 offensive tackles taken in round number 1. But again, this is a draft class that I think is, there's a lot of guys that you can make a strong argument for in round number 1. We're looking as many as 12 guys coming off the board in the first, well, even more than that, possibly even 14 taken in the first 2 days of the draft. That'd be the most since 2021, where we saw 13, 3 in round 1, 6 in round 2, and 4 in the third. So really, when we look at history, when we look at last year's draft, right? There were 4 tackles taken in round 1. Paris Johnson, Cardinals trading down, getting to number 6, getting that offensive tackle for Kyler Murray. Staying in the top 10, the Bears taking Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, a guy that really moved up draft boards quickly. You look at Broderick Jones out of Georgia going to the Steelers at 14. Broderick Jones looks like he's moving over to the left side more than likely there for the Steelers. And then Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. This is a guy that I think is going to be a staple there on the right side of that offensive line, going to the Jaguars, number 27 overall. And then as the draft went along, a couple of guys that are probably guards, right? That played tackle, but we're seeing them play guard. Round 2, Matthew Bergeron, Cody Mauch going to the Falcons and Buccaneers, both starters at guard. We expected them to kick inside. They went off the board 38 and 48 overall. Bergeron was a guy that some people thought maybe coming off the board in round 1. We saw 2 tackles come off the board in round number 3. Tyler Steen of Alabama, their left tackle. Now looks like he's a starter at right guard for the Eagles. And then at 92 overall, the Chiefs getting Wanye Morris, who again, right now, he may be their left tackle now that Donovan Smith is on his way out. 3 in round number 4. Blake Freeland got some playing time there with the Colts, a valuable playing time. At 111 overall, the mammoth DeJuan Jones from the Browns. A guy who I think could end up seeing some playing time there. Jack Conklin, the injury history and such. You got Carter Warren, with the Jets. a guy that's gotten some playing time. He's more of a reserve, I think, at this point. You look at Cody Sorsdahl, William and Mary going to the Lions. This is a guy that actually got to fill in some time there at guard. Asim Richards, Warren McClendon coming off the board in round 5 as well. In round 6, Jalen Duncan to the Titans. This is a guy, you look at him, 186 overall. He got some time starting at left tackle, really struggled. He and Andre Dillard both. That's why the Titans are going to be looking for an offensive tackle. I think Joe Alt fits perfectly there. Ma'asala Amave Laulu going to the Ravens. He's a guy that's kicking inside the guard as well. And then in round number 7, Jake Witt, the Northern Michigan guy. Ryan Hayes of Michigan going to the Colton Dolphins respectively. And then at 251 overall, Spencer Anderson out of Maryland. So when you look at the draft class, we have 4 2-2 in the first 3 rounds of the draft. So just 8 guys on the first 2 days, and then really just kind of consistent, between 2 to 3 with the remainder of the 4 rounds there on day number 3. If we look at 2022, 22 offensive tackles taken. This is the draft with Ikem Ekwonu, Evan Neal, and Charles Cross all coming off the board. In the top 10, Trevor Penning at 19 to the Saints. We know the struggles there. I think the Saints are looking for an offensive tackle to be an upgrade over him. Maybe Penning kicks inside to guard. Tyler Smith, a bit of a surprise coming off the board in round 1, 24 overall from Tulsa. Going to the Cowboys. This is a guy that actually looks like a heck of a pick there by Jerry Jones and company. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Either way, he's starting. We know that for sure. Round 3, a couple of 3 more starters here with Nicolas Petit-Frere with the Titans, a guy that's probably going to be playing at right tackle. Abraham Lucas to the Seahawks at 72 overall, just 3 picks later. This is a guy that's battled some knee injuries, so there's some concern there with the Seahawks with some depth there up front. You look at Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan going to the Colts, starting left tackle. And then Sean Ryan, to the Packers at 92 overall. Sean Ryan kicking inside the guard there for the Pack, and I think they could probably do better than Ryan there at right guard. I think the Packers are going to be looking to upgrade the interior of that line. Then you get to day 3, some interesting picks. Daniel Fa'alele, the mammoth offensive tackle from Minnesota, going to the Ravens. The Ravens, I think, Fa'alele, I don't think is the answer there. I think they're going to be looking elsewhere. Max Mitchell thrusted into a starting job there with the Jets. He's a guy that's more of a swing tackle type. Came out of Louisiana. Then you have Darian Kennard, Matt Waletzko to the Chiefs and Cowboys respectively. Those guys who are interior linemen. And then we had a run of tackles there in round number 6. Vidarian Lowe, Zach Thomas, Nick I'll butcher his name, Zach Kelge, Austin Deculus, Luke Tenuta. Then you get to round 7, Thayer Munford with the Raiders, 238 overall. The Raiders, look, when Jermaine Illuminor went down to injury, this was a guy that moved from guard out to tackle and actually held up pretty well. And so that's something that the Raiders have to be considering when they look at, do we need to take an offensive tackle with that number 13 overall pick? I don't think they do. Andrew Stuber, and then Rasheed Walker, 249 overall. The Packers may have their left tackle of the future. They've got David Bakhtiari. They had that staple there. All the injuries, they finally released him. Rasheed Walker didn't do that poorly of a job. That's why I think the Packers may look elsewhere other than offensive tackle with that first pick. And then A.J. Arcuri going to the Rams. You look at 2021, and this was a huge draft class at the offensive tackle position. 27. Penei Sewell, obviously we know, an all-pro caliber tackle. Alex Leatherwood didn't really pan out with the Raiders. Christian Darrisaw, solid for the Vikings. Round 1. Round 2, Tevin Jenkins kicking inside the guard there with the Bears. Liam Eichenberg, another guy that's probably a guard with the Dolphins. Walker Little is a backup to Cam Robinson with the Jaguars. Jackson Carman kicked inside the guard with the Bengals. Sam Cosmi, the Commanders, another guy that's probably a guard. Dylan Radins, Titans. Versatility to play both tackle and guard. We've seen both of those. Round 3, Jalen Mayfield hasn't really panned out there with the Falcons. Brady Christensen with the Panthers. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Spencer Brown to the Bills. With Spencer Brown, starter there at right tackle. He's been that way since 2021. Robert Hainsey, Notre Dame. I mean, he's playing center for the Bucs. I think the Bucs may look for an upgrade there. And then you get into round 4, round 5. Some of the names to pop out would be Dan Moore with the Steelers. This was a guy that struggled mightily there at left tackle. I think they're looking for an upgrade for sure. That's why they're moving Broderick Jones over to the left side. Larry Borum from Missouri going to the Bears in round 5. He got a chance to start there. He's more of a swing tackle as well. Stone Forsythe, Landon Young, Tommy Doyle, guys that really they're filling out rosters, but nothing really substantial there at the back end of that draft. You look at 2020's draft. Again, all the guys taken in round 1: Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson. Mekhi Becton, the injuries, Isaiah Wilson, we know what happened there with the Titans. Ezra Cleveland from Boise State. He was solid for the Vikings. Then he gets traded. He's still a starting caliber guard at the next level. Josh Jones, Lucas Niang, Matt Peart, guys that really provided depth up front for their teams. Sadiq Charles, Ben Barch, Charlie Heck. Colton McKivitz taken in round number 5. Another name. Look, he got his first year as a starter there for the 49ers, struggled mightily. He's going to be on his way out as well. Then 2019. Jonah Williams taken in number 11 overall. He's now with the Cardinals. He struggled with injuries. Andre Dillard, struggled with the Eagles, struggled with the Titans. Titus Howard has actually been a solid right tackle there for the Texans, coming out of Alabama State, number 23 overall. And then Caleb McGarry, he's on to his second contract there with the Falcons, 31 overall. Jawan Taylor moved on from the Jags to the Chiefs, struggled with a lot of penalties, but he signed the big contract. We'll see what happens there. Trey Pipkins, number 91 overall, out of Sioux Falls, going to the Chargers. Look, he's 1 year removed from having a solid 2022 season that ended up getting him a contract. And so it's one of those things to where he's owed $10 million. What do the Chargers do? I still think, they should go receiver. To be in all honesty, they should go Malik Neighbors. But knowing Jim Harbaugh, especially if they trade down, but even sitting there at 5, J.C. Latham is an offensive tackle for Jim Harbaugh. It just feels like it's a tailor-made fit for him. The Rams took 2 guards in rounds 3 and 5. Bobby Evans, David Edwards. David Edwards now a starter there for the Bills. So when you look at the draft classes overall, we had 5-year average, and really the 3-year, right around 4 in round 1. You're looking at between 2 and 3 in round number 2, 3 in round 3, right around 3 in round 4. So round 5, you're looking at between 2 and 3, 6 between 3 and 4, and round 7 between 2 and 3. So you're looking at right around between 22 and 23 offensive tackles. And so when I put everything together, when I was putting my mock draft, I've got 24 offensive tackles, which fits right in with that average, just a little bit above. And that would be the second most offensive tackles taken since that 2021 draft. But when we jump into things, we look at the first round. J.C. Latham, I mentioned, going to the Chargers. I think he could even come off the board at number 5 overall because he just fits exactly what the Chargers need, what they want. They want to get physical in the running game. J.C. Latham can do that. And I think he has the athleticism to ultimately be a solid pass protector. But look, they want to get physical. They want that ground game. J.C. Latham is their guy. And if they trade back to 11, then they could go either J.C. Latham or Taliese Fuaga. Joe Alt, Notre Dame. Obviously, this is a guy that's not getting past Tennessee there at 7, as I mentioned earlier. Olu Fashanu, Penn State. For a while, I was saying this guy was a shoo-in to be a first rounder. Didn't have as good a 2023 season as he did in 2022. But look, I think, I don't think he's getting past the Saints sitting there at 14. I really don't. Could he go as high as the Jets there at 10? You allow Fautanu to sit a year. You learn from a future Hall of Famer in Tyron Smith. Taliese Fuaga is an interesting one because this is a guy that could go to the Chargers there, that he could go to the Jets. I don't think the Bears are going to go tackle. They already have Darnell Wright, especially at right tackle. But he could go to the Saints. You're also talking about the Bengals sitting there at 18. Seattle with Abraham Lucas. What's the status of that knee? But the Steelers are an interesting one because the Steelers need that right tackle. They need to protect their investments there at quarterback with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They also need that interior lineman, a potential, a center, a guard. Looking at Graham Barton and Jackson Powers Johnson. But I think Taliese Fuaga, they might trade up to land him if he's still sitting on the board. Tyler Guyton and Amarius Mims from Oklahoma and Georgia. These are two talented young guys. Amarius Mims has battled some injuries. He's only played in 15 games, but you see the potential is there. I look at the Ravens. The Ravens, they lost Morgan Moses, and I mentioned that Daniel Fa'alele is not the answer. I think that Amarius Mims would be a perfect fit there. And then I mentioned San Francisco needing an upgrade over Colton McKivitz. They get it with Tyler Guyton. Round 2, Kingsley Suamataia there with BYU. I think that, I look at the Patriots. They've spent a lot of time with him. They need another tackle, especially with Trent Brown no longer on the roster. You also have Connor McDermott as well, a guy that there are some question marks with his game. Ultimately, I think this would be a good pick overall for the Patriots. You look at Jordan Morgan there with Arizona, a guy that can play both guard and tackle. A guy that could have come out and entered the draft a season ago, but had it not been for the ACL injury. Commanders let Charles Leno go, cost-cutting measure. I think Jordan Morgan, look, he's 6'5", 311. He can play tackle at the next level. I really think that he would be a good fit there, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Roger Rosengarten, I've seen a lot of people mocking him, going to the 49ers there at number 31 overall. Might be a little bit too high, but look, I think a lot of the recency bias, taking a look at what Rosengarten ran up against Michigan. But this is a guy, there's a lot of really good tape, really excellent movement skills, a guy that'll get out and pull, a guy that is solid in pass protection, very long. Look, if the Chargers don't go with an offensive tackle in round 1, this could be a guy that they could take in round number 2. Really, towards the top there of round 2. I think, if they could go receiver because of the depth of that draft, and still get J.C. Latham, you're getting a high-end wide receiver, whether it's Xavier Legette, Xavier Worthy, there at 37. But Rosengarten, you can get Malik Neighbors and Roger Rosengarten as well. That's not a bad fit overall either. So that makes things interesting as well. So I look at the 49ers as well. So, if Tyler Guyton is not your answer, then I think Roger Rosengarten could absolutely be that guy that they select there in round number 2 as well. And then KC, they need an offensive tackle. Donovan Smith, as I mentioned, Wanye Morris, he has experience on both sides, largely unproven. We've seen what's happened with Jawan Taylor. Patrick Paul is 6'7", 331 pounds, with 36 and an eighth-inch arms. Freaking long arms, uses those hands well, functional mobility to be effective in both the running game and in pass protection. I think he's a round 2 guy towards the bottom half of round number 2. Javon Foster and Karan Amagadije. I look at those two guys as round 3 prospects. With Javon Foster, a guy that, look, he played left tackle for Mizzou. It was one of those things where it wasn't always pretty. The footwork wasn't always there, but this guy is incredibly strong. He's physical at the point of attack, and really an impressive base. I look at the Jets. The Jets, if they address some other positions, I think at 72 overall, look, you can get a right tackle. This is a guy that could also learn from Tyron Smith. He has that versatility. Could he play left tackle? I just don't think he has the foot speed for it. But the Jets would be a nice pick. That'd be a nice pickup for them. Again, if they decide that they're going to be going in a different direction. And then with Amagadije, I look at where he could come off the board. I'm looking at the Bengals. I mentioned, the Bengals, look, they have their bookends right now with Orlando Brown Jr. and Trent Brown. Trent Brown signed just a 1-year deal. I don't think he's a long-term answer there. I think they can bring in Karan, have him learn a little bit from these two guys, and then he'll have that positional versatility to play either side of that line. I think he's athletic enough to be able to do that. Then you get into round number 4. Round 4, could we move some of this around a little bit? I think you could. I really debated whether or not I put additional offensive tackles there in round 4. If we look at really how the draft shakes up, if we end up going with 6, 4, and 2, that really puts us, at 12. Just to start out, round 4, 2019, we didn't see a single tackle taken in round 4. That was also a draft class where we only had 19, much like 2023, only 19 tackles taken. But the last 3 years, we've seen right around 3 taken in round number 4. So I look at Blake Fisher out of Notre Dame, a guy that a lot of people think may come off the board sooner in as high as round 2. I was trying to find a spot for him, and I think it's one of those things to where just because of the depth of talent at some of the other positions that some of ththese tackles may get pushed down. I think the Raiders, they could use some of their picks elsewhere. I look at Fisher. Look, he's a guy that can come in, that gives them some of those options there. Thayer Mumford can move inside to guard and allow Fisher to end up taking over that right tackle spot. 6'6", 310. I think he and Colton Miller could do a lot like what they have at Notre Dame with Joe Alt and Blake Fisher there. So I think that would be an interesting fit. I look at round number 5, and I've got 4 guys coming off the board here. Again, these are guys that could shift up. We could see a shift a little bit here with this draft, but because I have so many guys coming off the board in the first 2 rounds, it's kind of where things kind of shifted a little bit for me. When we look at round 5, you're talking about 3 guys coming off the board, so one of these guys more than likely is going to end up coming off the board in round number 4, again, as we kind of shift things up a little bit, especially with those draft priorities. I look at a guy like Mac Goncalves. This was a guy that he battled some injuries in 2023, but he has experience at both tackle positions. Good footwork, good power. He has some physical limitations. 6'6", 327. I look at the Bills. The Bills, look, they gave up the fewest sacks, so there's confidence there, but depth is a concern. I think he could be a nice guy to pick up there on day 3 of the draft. I think of a couple of other guys that would be nice picks, and I think of one guy, Travis Glover. When you think of Travis Glover, this was a guy, look, he was not invited to the Combine, but he was at the Senior Bowl, showed up really well there, and he's got a lot of size, 6'5", 327 pounds. I think Arizona, look, Jonah Williams, I mentioned, is set to replace DJ Humphries opposite Paris Johnson. But look, I think they need that swing tackle because, look, Jonah Williams, can he stay healthy? That's a big question mark. Glover, look, he started his career as a left guard, 3-year starter at left tackle at Georgia State. He's a guy, once he gets his hands on you, it's all she wrote. Watch out, lights out, right? So he's one of those guys that I think has climbed up draft boards. Could he end up being a 4th rounder? I think it's entirely possible. I also look at Caden Wallace out of Penn State, another guy that could end up coming off the board sooner. Washington Commanders, I mentioned, look, even if they use an early pick on a future left tackle, they need someone to challenge Andrew Wiley at right tackle. He struggled quite a bit. And Wallace, look, he started 40 games for the Nittany Lions, all at right tackle. I think that makes a lot of sense coming off the board there at 152 overall to Washington. I like that fit. And then Walter Rouse out of Oklahoma. Walter Rouse, if the name sounds familiar for those on the West Coast, Pac-12 guy. Is he a 5th rounder? Is he a 6th rounder? I ultimately think he's going to come off the board in round number 5. I think right now I have him mocked in round 6. I think he's a guy that I look at the Jaguars. Again, left tackle, right tackle. What's happening there? They're set at right tackle with Anton Harrison. But what's going on with Cam Robinson? I think if they look for an overhaul up front, Walter Rouse would be a guy, a nice pickup later on in the draft, be able to solidify things there up front for that offensive line. And then you look at round number 6. Delmar Glaze out of Maryland. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? 6'4", 215 pounds. Struggles with some of that lateral agility. And because of that, I look at Glaze. I think he'll ultimately kick inside to guard. And we've seen, history tells us that we're going to see guys kick inside to guard. I look at Denver. I think that could be a good fit there for Delmar Glaze. Look, Tylan Crable showed up at the Combine, showed up really well. Ran a sub 540, looked very athletic playing there at UCF. I think he's a guy that's going to come off the board there, probably in that round 6 range. Garrett Greenfield of South Dakota State, 6'6", 311. Man, this dude can jump. The lower body explosiveness showed up at 6'6", 311, 38.5-inch vertical leap. Now his arm length, 33.5, but he's got good overall size. I think that'll be okay. He's a guy that I think could end up playing tackle at the next level. And Christian Jones, the physicality there at Texas, 6'5", 305. He's a right tackle. Team's looking for a right tackle later on in the draft. I think Christian Jones will be a nice fit. And then trying to find some guys in that round 7 range. I look at Ethan Driscoll of Marshall, 6'8", 313. Has some good skills, right? He's a bigger dude, moves really well. KT Leviston out of Kansas State, 6'4", 326. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? I thought he actually held up really well. He and Cooper Beebe, K-State, that left side of the line was really strong. But when I watched KT Leviston, the way that he moved at the Combine, he just felt like a guard. And that's why I ultimately moved him down in my mock. I look at it, ran a 5.38 40, just a 27.5-inch vertical leap. Only repped out 25 times, which was surprising. But look, he's got good length, so I can't hold that against him too much. 34 and 3/8-inch arms. So I think that arm length could keep him at tackle. I ultimately think the foot speed is what's going to get him in trouble. I think he kicks inside to guard. One name to be mindful of is Byron Matos. Now, this is a name that I think as we get into day 3 of the draft, people will be talking about him a lot more. This was a guy who played basketball at UCF, right? And, from the Dominican Republic, had never played football in his life, but he comes out at 6'7" and 313 pounds. Bengals are one that are, they actually had him show up as one of their 30 pre-draft visits. And Jordan Mailata, 2018, this dude was drafted in the 7th round. You have that international player pathway program, and I just look at this. He's a raw kid. Could end up falling in that same path that Jordan Mailata played. And this is a guy, you just watched his workouts, just some of the numbers that he put up. And this is a guy that he's a head turner for sure. Ran a sub 540. They said that his movement skills, it's like he was out on that basketball court moving around. Very athletic. Using that defensive stance and everything. And I think, let's see, he moved to, this is according to Bengals Wire. This was a kid who moved to the U.S. at 16, played basketball at New Mexico, transferred to South Florida, played in 48 games. 35.25-inch arms, and again, sub 540. So a guy that I think could fall on that Jordan Mailata, and really with that international player, I think it makes a lot of sense. Other guys there on the back end, Aneem Dankwa out of Howard, 6'8", 353, is a mammoth tackle. I think there's some skill there, but I think he's more of a project. I look at Julian Pearl out of Illinois, 6'6", 312. He's really the guy that I think could find his way into a draft room and get drafted. And then Frank Crum out of Wyoming, 6'8", 313. This was a guy that I think was a head turner at the Combine. Ended up with the fastest 40, I believe, at a 4.94. In terms of the offensive lineman. And you look at the 3-cone drill, ran a really respectable 7.39, which was among the top there for offensive linemen. So just because of that athleticism, I think he's the guy that's either going to get drafted or be a high priority free agent. So that takes care of the tackle position, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the guards. Now, when we look at guards historically, we don't see a ton of these guys coming off the boards, right? We saw, let's see, 3-year average, we're looking at about 16, really, and 5-year average, about 16 is about what feels right. And I've got 16 guards, believe it or not, coming off the board this year. First round, you're looking at between 1 and 2. We saw as many as 3 come off the board in 2022, none in 2020. Right around 2 in 2020 in the second round. We saw 3 in each of the from 2019 to 2022 come off the board in round 3, none in 2023, but we did see 6 come off the board in the 4th round, which we also saw in 2020. So the average there, you're looking at between 3 and 4, depending on the 5-year average or 3-year. 3-year, we saw the 6 in 2023, as I said, none in 2021. This was a really weak draft class at the guard spot. Only 11 guards taken, no guards taken in round 5, which we also saw in 2019. 2 taken in the other 3 years. So you're looking at right around 1 if you're looking at the average of round 5. In round 6, between 2 and 3. Didn't see any come off the board in round 6 in 2023, but we saw 6 in 2022. And then round 7, you're looking at average right at 3 for both 3 and 5-year averages. So when we look at 2023's guard draft, obviously Peter Skoronski is the name that comes to mind for sure. He was a tackle, but we knew he was going to be playing a guard, so that's why he's here. Number 11 overall. The 5th pick in round number 2, Steve Avila, one of my favorite picks in 2023. Went to the Rams, started there at guard for them, kicking inside to the pivot now with Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson under contract, signing the big deals there with the Rams. Focus on protecting Matthew Stafford. Osiris Torrance is a starter there for the Bills. He was taken number 59 overall. A lot of people thought he might have been a first rounder. And then you jump to round 4, and again, this is where we saw 6 guys. Nick Saldiveri of Old Dominion hasn't really emerged just yet. Anthony Bradford looks like he's starting there for the Seahawks. Chandler Zavala provided good depth for the Panthers. Sidney Sau there for the Patriots out of Eastern Michigan. He's a guy that rose up draft boards and looks like he may be a starter this year. Braden Daniels, he's slated actually to play tackle because look, Utah, he was a tackle there. And then everyone was expected to play guard. Guess what? He's actually playing tackle for the Commanders. John Gaines, Antonio Mafi taken in round 4 and 5 from UCLA. Jordan McFadden with the Chargers, good depth. Jovan Gwynn and Cooper Hodges. But then Andrew Voorhees, going to the Ravens from USC, round number 7. This was a guy, look, I thought that he was a solid guy. Yeah, I had him coming off the board probably in round 4. He tears that ACL at the combine. Look, this guy tears his ACL and ultimately says, you know what, I'm still going to go do the bench press, basically on one leg. If you do the bench press, you want to be anchored. And this guy's put up 38 reps at 225, essentially with one leg. He's a guy that I think watch for him as a starter there for the Ravens. 2022, 3 guys taken in round 1. Kenyon Green, starter there for the Texans. Zion Johnson, starter for the Chargers. Cole Strange, starter for the Patriots. We saw 3 starters there. Luke Gadecki for the Bucks. We thought he was going to be a guard. That's why he's in the guard group. He's actually their right tackle and a guy that I think is going to be their starter there. Ed Ingram to the Vikings. And then in round 3, we saw the Giants really round 3 and round 5, taking a couple of guys out of North Carolina, Joshua Azudu, and then Marcus McKeithen, Dylan Parham to the Raiders, a guy that can play both center and guard. Logan Bruss battled injuries there with the Rams. Round 4, Spencer Burford, 49ers, struggled filling in for John Feliciano. Cordell Volson, North Dakota State, was a tackle. We knew he was going to kick inside the guard there with the Bengals, and he's a starter there for them. Round at the 168 overall, the Bears. Braxton Jones out of Southern Utah. A lot of people thought he was going to kick inside the guard. Guess what? He's actually their left tackle now. Justin Schaefer and Jamari Sawyer coming off the board, 5 picks apart from Georgia. I look at Jamari Sawyer. Look, this is a guy that he has the versatility to play both tackle and guard. He's a starter there for the Chargers at guard. This was a run in the 6th round. Cade Mays, Doug Kramer, Chasen Hines, Lasita Smith. So that group really, you look at those names, guys that would fill out rosters. Haven't really seen much of an impact from that group. You get into 2021, this was really a weak draft class overall. Just 11 guys taken. Rashawn Slater to the Chargers. Everyone kind of thinking he was going to be a guard. Guess what? Franchise left tackle. Elijah Vera Tucker picked one pick later. This was a guy that really, he's had to play multiple positions, both guard and tackle, both sides of the line, and he's battled injuries, but when he's healthy, he's solid as a rock. In round 2, just one tackle taken. That was Aaron Banks out of Notre Dame. Look, he's guard taken, and Aaron Banks, starter there for the 49ers. Wyatt Davis, Kendrick Green, some depth there with the Steelers. Ben Cleveland looks like he's going to be a starter there with the Ravens. No picks in rounds 4 or 5. Deontay Brown, William Sherman, Trey Smith there with the Chiefs, number 226 overall. He had the health issues, if you'll remember, but KC took a chance on him, and he's rewarded them with some good starting play there for the Chiefs. Sitting there with a couple of rings to his name there as well. 2020, interesting draft because nobody taken in round 1, but look at these names: Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, Jonah Jackson. Robert Hunt and Jonah Jackson signed some big deals. Damian Lewis from LSU was a starter there for Seattle. John Simpson also getting himself a contract there in round number 4. Kevin Dotson in round 4 as well. Getting with the Rams, signing his big deal as an extension. You got Ben Bredesen, who's kind of bounced around a little bit, guard, center, playing multiple positions. Michael Onwenu. Now there's a guy, was a day 1 starter for the Patriots, taking number 182 overall out of Michigan. Can play. He's actually been playing some tackle for them as well, which is interesting. Tremaine Ankrum, bounced around a little bit. Looks like he may be a starter there. John Runyon, another guy who's going to provide some depth, possibly a starter there in round number 6 of the draft. 2019, 15 guys taken here. Chris Lindstrom. This guy's been a machine there for the Falcons, 14 overall. Cody Ford hasn't really panned out. Dalton Reisner, has been on the move from the Broncos. Elton Jenkins, he can play tackle, he can play guard, he can play center. He's got that versatility. He's a valuable offensive lineman there for the Packers. Connor McGovern in round number 3. He's a guy that's gotten some playing time. Halte Froholt, is now the starting center for the Cardinals. He was taken in round number 4. You've got Ben Powers and Philip Haynes, guys that have had some starting experience as well. So you look at this group, and there's some names even on day 3 of the draft who have emerged. We've seen some of the guys there at the top of the draft as well who are still starters to this day. So when we look at this year's draft class, Troy Fautanu is the first name that jumps out. Absolutely, right? This is a guy that can play both tackle and guard, and there's some that are even saying, hey, maybe Pittsburgh would want him to play center. I just look at Fautanu, 6'4", 317. He's got great movement skills, a guy that can get out and pull. You see all the different sets, whether it's a jump set or taking that 45. Whatever he's doing, he does it just effortlessly. I don't think he gets past Seattle at 16. I really don't. If Pittsburgh wants him, they're going to have to trade up to get him. He can come off the board. Really, even the Jets there at 10. That might be a little rich, but Fautanu is a guy that whether it's a ground game, Chargers. Hey, Chargers trade down with Minnesota. They're at number 11. Troy Fautanu could be that guy there as well. But Seattle, look, Ryan Grubb was his offensive coordinator there at Washington. Now he's there in Seattle as the offensive coordinator for Coach McDonald, and he knows what he's getting there. And so I could see him easily sliding in there and taking over one of the guard spots, and it just makes too much sense. You look at Cooper Beebe in round number 2. 6'3", 322 pounds. Cooper Beebe, to me, is the physicality. You watch him pull; it's a thing of beauty. I think the Bucs need to address the guard spot. Get some physicality up front. that's something that I think they definitely need. Just so strong, so effective as a drive blocker, just manhandles his opponents, clearing the way. He's got shorter arms, 31 and a half inch arms, but he has played tackle in a pinch there at K-State. But with Tampa, as I mentioned, look, they lost Aaron Stinney, they lost Nick Leverett, they brought in Ben Bredesen and Sua Opeta to provide depth, but they really need a day one starter there at left guard, and Cooper Beebe would absolutely fill that void. I think Christian Haynes out of Connecticut, another guy, look, 6'3", 317. I've had him penciled in there at Arizona for quite some time, and it feels right. I kind of mess around. Could I put him somewhere else? It feels right. Is he a second rounder? Is he a third rounder? You could probably move him in a couple of different directions. I look at my mock, and he's actually in round number 3. But again, you could put him in a bunch of different spots. I've got him going to Arizona at number 71 overall. And it makes a lot of sense, I think, because I think there is some uncertainty there. You've got Elijah Wilkinson, share the starting role with Tristan Colon, but they don't have a true starter there, right? They both signed 1-year deals, but are they starters? Haynes, 4-year starter, 49 consecutive starts, gave up just 1 sack, 15 total pressures over the last 2 seasons with the Huskies. He's a guy that he's athletic, and it just makes too much sense to me in that area. Brandon Coleman out of TCU, 6'4", 313. This is another guy that could he come off the board in round 2 or 3? That's a real question mark. I've got him in round 3 in my mock, 85 overall to the Browns. I think ultimately looking at Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, at some point they're going to have to look to the future with that group. Coleman, look, he in 2023 at guard gave up just 1 sack on 723 pass snaps. Also credited with 32 knockdown blocks according to Pro Football Focus, and he's got some long arms, 34 and 5/8 inch arms. Ran a 4.99 40 leap of 34 inches. That vertical at the combine. He can be explosive. He can be effective at pulling, getting to the second level. I ultimately think he's a guard. He can play tackle, but I just don't see that happening. So here's the question: do any of these guys end up coming off the board in round number 2? It's entirely possible, because you're looking at right around, we've had 2 come off the board in 2022, 2023. I think Christian Haynes can end up being that guy, although Brandon Coleman's another guy that could hear his name called, because I think he's moving up draft boards. Round 3, I definitely have Dominic Pooney, a guy. Look, could he come off the board in round number 2? Absolutely. I think he absolutely could as well. I've got him coming off the board to the Jaguars. I mentioned Ezra Cleveland. He signed a 3-year deal, brought some stability. But I look at Brandon Sheriff. Look, he signed that 3-year deal after 5 Pro Bowl seasons with Washington. He's yet to live up to that. Now he's had his contract restructured in the last year of his deal. Make or break season for him. He may be sent packing with another down year. Dominic Pooney gives you that versatility to play both tackle and guard. Look, surrendered just 8 pressures in 2023, ranked him 6th in pass block, according to Pro Football Focus. Doesn't have that ideal length, but it feels like, man, he can kick inside the guard. He played that during the 2022 season for the Jayhawks. I think Pooney's a starter at the next level at that guard spot. Makes a lot of sense. So really, when you're looking at it, in the first 2 days of the draft, that only gives us 5, right? So we only saw 3 come off the board in in 2023, but in 2022 we saw as many as 8. In 2021 there were 6. In 2019 there were even 7. So when you're looking at this draft class, that feels a little light. I think Zach Zinter is another name that we could potentially hear called in round number 3. I've got him coming on in my mock in round 4. To the 49ers. I think that upgrade over John Feliciano, Spencer Burford makes a lot of sense. Look, he's tough, he's hard-nosed, started 42 games for that broken tibia and fibula against Ohio State. Devastating, but look, this dude is physical, heavy-handed as a pass protector. If you've listened to my podcast at all, I'm a huge fan of Zach Zinter. He's top 5, always been at my guard spot, really no question there. Just tried to find the right fit for him. And so I think he's a guy that can come off the board in round number 3 as well. I think that's something that he could fit right in there. So if we include him, then that's ultimately 6 guys coming off the board. Still feels a little bit on the lighter side, but when we look at the 3-year average, that actually puts us right at 6. So it may actually be the right spot. So then you look at the 4th round, you're looking at Sataoa Laumea, 6'4", 319 there out of Utah. And Laumea, this dude, he played right tackle. He looks like he's a guard, looks like a guy that's going to kick inside the guard. I'm looking at the Packers. Again, they need an upgrade over Sean Ryan. I thought he struggled with speed, but you kick him inside, you can take advantage of his strength and power at the point of attack, generate some movement in that running game for Josh Jacobs, A.J. Dillon and company. I like that pick. Christian Mahogany of Boston College is another guy, 6'3", 314. With Mahogany, that ACL tear really kind of threw things off for him. Right now I have him mocked in round number 5. It's a little hard to always, as you're going through the flow of a draft, find places to put them in, and but I think he can come off the board in round number 4. I look at with Dalton Reisner no longer there with the Vikings. I think this is a guy that's going to challenge Blake Brandel for that starting left guard spot. Big, powerful, as I mentioned, started 32 games, missed that 2022 season with the ACL tear, still recovering from the injury. Lateral movement didn't look to be back 100%, but this dude is heavy-handed, can absolutely wipe out defenders on the perimeter when pulling. 4th round actually feels like the right spot for him. And then I'm going to give you one other name, Isaiah Adams, there out of Illinois. 6'4", 315, athletic, a guy that, look, he also played tackle for the Illini. I didn't agree with that move. I mean, obviously there's some limitations there, but when you think of Adams, the issue ultimately for him was the simple fact that he struggled with some of the speed, and I think he's one of those guys that I look at and he just feels like, hey, that 4th, 5th round range. I look at the Eagles sitting there, 171 overall. I mentioned Tyler Steen at right guard. I think you can get Adams in there, get that athleticism there. I think he'll work well in pass protection along the inside. Strong, good hand placement, good leg drive. He could battle Steen there for a starting spot, 6'4", 315 pounds. Mason McCormick out of South Dakota. He's one of those round 4, round 5 tweeners for me. South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, 6'4", 309. A guy that can play guard or center. That's one thing that I think is really interesting about him. You see the nastiness. That's one of the things that I think that absolutely jumps out when you watch him play. I look at Cincinnati. They have Ted Karras and Trey Hill, along with Jackson Carman. They're all in the final year of their deals. Athletic interior lineman, 42 consecutive games started for the Jackrabbits. He's a mauler in the run game, also effective as a puller, can climb to the second level. Did a great job anchoring in pass protection, which was on full display there at the East-West Shrine game. I think Mason McCormick is a starter at the next level, and that fourth round isn't out of the possibility, but I think 5th round feels like that might be the right spot. Nathan Thomas of Louisiana, 6'5", 332 pounds, played left tackle for the Raging Cajuns. I actually think he's going to kick inside the guard. I think he's a guy that could end up starting at the next level as well. I look at the Chiefs at 159 overall, and again, Thomas could come off the board much sooner. But I look at him. I look at Trey Smith is going to be a free agent in 2025. They've Creed Humphrey, he's likely getting re-signed. But you look at Joe Tooney, coming off that injury in 2023. He's now 33 years of age. According to SpotTrack.com, could save $16 million with $10 million in dead cap if he's released. Even if he's retained, you're going to need to add a depth piece because, look, that injury bug, that could absolutely happen. And Thomas, look, I think he's an effective run blocker. The pass protection not nearly up to par there, so I think inside that move feels right. When we look at round 5, we said right around 1, right? So one of these guys, we had 2 taken in each of the last 2 years. So if Mahogany comes off the board in round number 4, potentially even Isaiah Adams, and you're looking at McCormick and Thomas, that ends up working out. That checks out pretty well. I think then you get into round number 6. Trevor Keegan of Michigan, 6'5", 310. This dude was a veteran up front on that offensive line Joe Moore award-winning offensive line for the Wolverines. I think I look at a team like Baltimore. John Simpson, Kevin Zeitler, both gone. Interior line, we know is going to look different. Ben Cleveland, Andrew Voorhees getting the first crack of starters. Keegan, the 37-game starter there at Michigan, gives at least, if nothing else, good depth. I think another Michigan guy played offensive tackle, 6'4", 305, Trente Jones. Round 6 just feels like the right spot for him. Look, he really solidified that right side of the line at tackle. Carson Barnhart struggled mightily with athleticism. He moved inside to guard, was much more effective. I actually have Barnhart coming off the board in round 7. That's really where I think it makes the most sense, putting him there in round 7. I look at round 6, and we didn't have any come off the board in round 6 last year. So I've got Keegan and Jones, average between 2 and 3. Javion Cohen out of Miami could also potentially fit the bill there. 6'4", 324 pounds. I look at Layden Robinson as well out of Texas A&M. Physical at the point of attack. So really kind of heavy in the first 5 rounds, and then not so much in round 6 and 7. I've got 5, 6 guys. We saw as many as 9 come off the board in 2022. So again, 3-year average, 5-year average is 16. I've got 16 right here. Keaton Bills of Utah is another name to watch out for. Physical guard there for Utah. Matthew Jones of Ohio State. Gottlieb Azede. Look, he's athletic. He got some playing time. He transferred in there to the Terrapins, and got to start there. Not a ton of time at the FBS level. Ladarius Henderson played tackle at Michigan. He's going to kick inside to guard, but he's one of those guys that I'm having a harder time penciling in there. So it feels right that the 16 that I've mentioned, which again, 3-year average, 5-year average, we're right there. And then finally we'll move to the center position, the pivot, middle of the offensive line. This is a group that, look, you're looking at 3-year average, 5-year average, right around 8. We saw as many as 10 come off the board in 2021, as few as 6 1 year later in 2022. Last year, there were 9. Only 4 taken in the first 2 days of the draft, and then 5 on the back half. When we look at this position over the last 10 years, we haven't seen a ton of guys taken in round number 1. In fact, only 7 have. 2015, Cam Irving going 19 overall to Cleveland. 2016, Ryan Kelly, number 18 overall to Indy. 2018, Big Frank Ragnow, 20 overall to the Lions. Billy Price, Bengals follow up 1 pick later, taking him from Ohio State. 2019, there's Garrett Bradbury coming off the board, 18 overall to the Vikings. 2020, there's Cesar Ruiz for the Saints, 24 overall, and then Tyler Linderbaum. We had a 3-year stretch. It's like 2015, 2016, and then nothing in 2017. 2018, 2019, 2020, and in 2018 we saw 2. And then we skipped 2021, 2022. We've got Tyler Linderbaum. And then nobody taken in 2023. So it just feels like we should have at least 1 center taken in the first round in 2024, right? I got 2, maybe even 3 guys to be mindful of. But look, when we look at the first round, over those last 5 years, again, we've seen 1 in the last 3 years and just 3 in the last 5. Really where you're seeing things, where it's heaviest is in round number 2. 3 last year with Joe Tippmann, John Michael Schmitz, Juice Scruggs. 2021, we also saw 3 come off the board, and that was the year that Landon Dickerson, Josh Myers, and Creed Humphrey came off the board in round 2. Creed Humphrey, the last of the group to come off the board there. Really a surprise. I had him coming off the board in round 1. I was surprised that he wasn't taken. We're looking at him as a Pro Bowler, a guy that really has been a model of consistency in his 3 seasons there in KC. Deserves that contract extension for sure. You look at round 3, average is about 1.
So one in each, the last 3 years. You're looking at Ricky Stromberg going to Washington. 2022, it was Luke Fortner to the Jags, who struggled. I might add. Quinn Miners, Wisconsin Whitewater, that small school guy that got a lot of love, can play guard and center. Going to the Broncos. Round 4, I think you're looking at one taken off the board there in round 4. We've seen one center taken in round 4 in each of the last 5 years. So you're looking at Jake Andrews to the Patriots. He's really a depth guy behind David Andrews. Zach Tom in 2022. This dude actually is playing right tackle for the Packers. Drew Dahlman to the Falcons in 2021. Starter there as well. Tyler Biadasz going to the Cowboys in round 4 of 2020. So really interesting there with round number 4 and guys that you could end up picking up there. Round 5, we didn't see any in 2021, 2 in 2020, just one in each of the last 2 years. But Olu Oluwatimi going to be a starter there for Seattle. Luke Wattenberg potentially a starter there with the Broncos. If I look at 6th round, you're looking at probably about a 2 average. We didn't see any in 2022, 2 in 2023. Luke Whippler, Jarrett Patterson, those were the names that came off the board there. In 2021, that was Trey Hill, Thomas Fletcher from Alabama, Cameron Cheeseman, and really those guys are long snappers that were taken there in round number 6. And then round 7, you're looking at between 1 and 2 coming off the board there. Alex Forsyth was the latest coming from Oregon to the Broncos at 257 overall. Dawson Deaton the year before that to the Browns out of Texas Tech. So really when you're looking at it, 3-year average, you're right around 8. And again, 9 in 2023, just 6 in 2022, and 10 in 2021. I've got as many as 10 that could come off the board. I think really 8 is probably the sweet spot. I think that average feels about right. But here's the thing. We've got 2 guys, and really, what do you call Garrett? Graham Barton. Is he a center? Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? All I know is this dude is a model of consistency, a technician, super intelligent, 6'5", 313, bit with the injury bug a bit there with the Blue Devils. But, man, I look at him, I look at Miami. Miami could use, either a center or a guard. He could come off the board at number 20 overall to the Steelers. They need a pivot ever since Mason Cole was let go. Could Graham Barton come off the board in the top half of round 1? I think it's entirely possible. He's super athletic. Again, an intelligent player. He's a guy that I think would be a leader on the offensive line. I think he has Pro Bowl potential as well. I've got him coming off the board to Miami, though, there at number 21 overall. And then Jackson Powers-Johnson going to Oregon. If Graham Barton is more of your offensive lineman, more of a guard, maybe interior lineman there, Jackson Powers-Johnson is your true pivot, right? 6'3", 328 pounds. Not a ton of starting experience there with the Ducks. Just the 1 year of true starting experience. But look, Remington Award winner, physical at the point of attack, a guy that's going to get out and want to maul you. He's super a lot of people give him a hard time about the athleticism. I think he can at least climb to the next level, stay square on the defender, and then he's going to clear the way. Fun personality as well. I look at the Cowboys sitting there at 24. Could they go with one of the offensive tackles? Sure. But I just look at that center spot now that Biadasz is gone. They haven't taken a center in round number 1 since they took Travis Frederick all those years ago. And so I think Jackson Powers-Johnson would be a nice fit there. I look at Zach Frazier of West Virginia. Some people have talked about him possibly on day 1 of the draft. I think he's coming off the board in round number 2. 6'3", 313, the former wrestler. This dude is a lot of fun to watch. And, when I look at Zach Frazier, he's another guy that I think would be a leader up front for his team. Much like the other 2 guys, JPJ and Graham Barton, I think they'd be leaders as well. I look at the Packers, and I look at Josh Myers. He was ranked as the 25th number 25, on the list in terms of the pivot in the league. Overall blocking grade of 54.7 by Pro Football Focus. If you can get Zach Frazier sitting there at number 41 overall, 4-year starter, 46 starts under his belt, 2-time All-American, 4-time state wrestling champ at heavyweight, vocal leader, 3-time team captain. I just think you pull the trigger. Cedric Van Pran, Granger, there from Georgia, 6'4", 298. Again, when we look at the averages, average tells us 1 in round number 3. Guess what? Cedric Van Pran is going to be that guy. And I think Pittsburgh, look, if they don't go with Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson there at number 20, or possibly even Troy Fautanu, then I think Cedric Van Pran just feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler in round number 3. I think that's really the value for him. That's where we're going to see him come off the board. Not a ton of length with him, but I think he does a good job. 44 consecutive starts. Once he gets his hands on you, plays with excellent leverage, generates a ton of movement. As a pass protector, didn't give up a single sack in his career, gave up just 23 total pressures. I think he's a guy that could help solidify the interior of that line for the Steelers. In round 4, I said that there was just one taken in each of the last 5 drafts. So if I had to pick one, I'm leaning towards Bo Limmer of Arkansas, 6'5", 302. He plays guard, he plays tackle, and I'm looking at Limmer. Really, the Panthers are sitting there at the top of round 4, 101 overall. Austin Corbett's coming off that ACL tear, and he's moving to the pivot. I look at Limmer, again, physical at the point of attack, anchors well. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. Held up better than I think a lot of people expected. Tough as nails. One other name to keep in mind as well that could come off the board in round 4. And again, we saw the history tells us there's just one that's coming off the board. One of these two guys will. The other one will fall to round number 5. I actually have him coming off the board in round 5, I believe. Let's see, and that's Hunter Norzad out of Penn State, and he's one of those guys. Look, Juice Scruggs, I thought a lot of people slept on him, and coming out of Penn State, look, they can produce those centers, right? I look at the Bears at 122 overall. This is where I have him mocked in round 4. They pick up Ryan Bates, they pick up Coleman Shelton. These guys are depth pieces because of their versatility. Could they be the long-term answer there at center? I really don't think so. Norzad, 4-year starter at both Cornell and Penn State. He played at tackle, guard, and center. Started all 13 games for Penn State in 2023. Athletic, reach blocks. He's effective there. Can also mirror the defensive tackles and pass protection. He does struggle with his anchor until he gets stronger there. But I think he could end up being a solid starter at the next level. So if he's the one that falls and you're looking at round 5, we saw 2 come off the board there in 2020, just 1 in each of the last 2 years, so that may be it for him. But I look at Tanner Bortolini. Some people have him coming off the board in round number 4. I think he's a round 5, round 6 guy out of Wisconsin, 6'4", 303, ultra athletic, struggles to anchor. There were quite a few guys that just ran him over at the Senior Bowl, so there is some concern there, but the athleticism, you get him out, let him work in space, whether it's climbing to the next level, getting out and pulling, super athletic, and a guy that's played virtually every position, I want to say, there at Wisconsin. Drake Nugent, Stanford, started, moved to Michigan, 6'1 and a half, 298, just a veteran leader there up front. He's a guy, I look at the 6th round, we saw as many as 3 come off the board in 2021, 2 this last season. So, I look at Bortolini, I look at Nugent. Those guys to me feel like round 6 options, with, again, Hunter Norzad being that guy coming off the board in round 5. So as it plays out, when we look at the averages, we're kind of sticking true to those averages, with the exception being round number 2. That's the one difference. Again, I've got both Barton and Powers Johnson coming off the board in round 1. History tells us that one of those guys is slipping. If anyone, it's going to be Jackson Powers Johnson. But then you look at the rest of the group. I think Jacob Monk of Kentucky, 6'3", 308. I look at Nick Samick of Michigan State, 6'4", 307. There's some that like him more than I do. that have him probably coming off the board much sooner. I've got him really, those two guys in that 6th to 7th round range. Other names that we can potentially see: Andrew Rame of Oklahoma, Dylan McMahon of NC State, the versatility to play both guard and center. Matt Lee. Look, I had Matt Lee ranked a lot higher. The athleticism I was a little disappointed in, but he's a guy that I think could end up getting drafted because, look, he was a veteran leader. He's done a lot of good things. Kingsley Agwakin, I'm not as high on him as some other people are there at Florida. Charles Turner III, I think the hand placement, he struggles a little bit there. And then Nick Gargiulo there of South Carolina. I know there are some that really like him. He's 6'3", 318, really good size. So just trying to find a fit for all of these guys. I named 10 right off the bat there that I see as potential draft picks. 8 feels like the right number because that's both the 3-year and 5-year averages. So ultimately, that would put Jacob Monk and Nick Samick really in that danger zone, if you will, because you're looking at Barton, Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier, Cedric Van Pron, Bo Limmer, Hunter Norzad, Tanner Bortolini, and Drake Nugent. That would be your 8 if we end up sticking with that 3-year and 5-year average. So again, just playing the numbers, playing the numbers game there, seeing what could fit in from a pattern standpoint, and those are the guys that kind of fit in. And again, I think Monk, Samick are 2 guys that could end up in that role. I think Gargiulo, Rame, McMahon, those are the 3 guys, and Lee potentially could be those replacements there. I think you've got a good group, a good mix of guys that could find themselves drafted. But again, history tells us no more than 10 in the last 5 years of the draft. So, I think ultimately, this is the group that we're going to be seeing come off the board. So that does it for the offensive line. We've made it through the entire offense. We've gotten through all the skill positions. We've gotten into the trenches. Now it's time to move to the other side of the football. We're going to look at the defense. We're going to start with defensive ends. We're going to look at defensive tackles. We'll look at linebackers, and then we'll get into the secondary. Obviously, we're kind of up against the gun trying to get all of these podcasts in because, look, the draft is on the 25th, day 1 of the draft. So my final mock needs to be released prior to that. So you can expect a podcast to be released there on Wednesday, April 24th. I want to make sure that I get that out in time for draft day. So we're going to probably record 1 podcast each and every day until we get up to the day of the draft. So a lot of material left to cover, a lot of good conversation getting through. You look at the edge rushers. Where's Dallas Turner going to go? Latu, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson. What does history tell us about edge rushers, defensive end spot, D tackles? This isn't a huge draft for first-round D tackles. I think you're looking at 2 guys that are going to come off the board there. But day 2, I think you're going to see a lot of good, solid D tackles. Linebacker group. A lot of people are saying that the linebackers, it's a weak draft, but I find a lot of guys on day 3, end of day 2 and then into day 3 are guys that could really help teams out. And I think we see that time and time again. It's a position that's been devalued to some degree. But look, San Francisco, man, I mean, we saw the impact that Dre Greenlaw had before he went down to injury. But when they were firing on all cylinders, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, that's how you get it done. I mean, you saw KC with Willie Gay and Leo Chenal and Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil. These teams are making it to the Super Bowl with their linebacker plays, playing a big role on defense. So I'm just saying that group, we're going to take a look at there, and then just how many defensive backs are going to come off the board in round 1. I think the corners, we've got a good 4 to 5 that I feel, I think 5, possibly even 6 that I feel good about. And then you look at the safety position. I don't think we're seeing one come off the board in round number 1, but there are a lot of good safeties, a lot of guys with a lot of range, some big hitters as well. So, if you're looking for any type of safety, I think you're going to find one in this year's draft as well. So we're going to have a lot to talk about from the defensive side of the football before we get into my final mock. I'm really looking forward to getting all of that together, bringing that content to you. So I hope you've enjoyed the ride so far, playing by the numbers. And until next time, for ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Draft is right around the corner. Until next time, I am out of here.